Kia ora koutou. Today I'm going to show you how we use indigenous horticultural principles to grow our bananas. So I used to spend heaps every week just buying supermarket bananas, and compared to the ones that I grow here, ones from the shop kind of taste like crap. I can't afford the nice organic ones, so I had to buy the cheaper imported ones. And the reason they're cheap and they taste like crap is because they're grown halfway around the world in plantations. They drench their crops with chemical herbicides, insecticides, fertilizers. They're harvested prematurely, and they're ripened artificially using ethylene gas, and a lot of those plantations don't have the best environmental or employment standards either, which explains why they're cheap. Commercial banana growers also use a number of practices, which means their plantations require quite a fair bit of maintenance, and we don't use any of those practices because, well, first because they're unnecessary practices, which don't really make much difference to the harvest or the growing. And the second one is probably because we're in the South Pacific here, we don't like to work too hard down here, so it's just not worth it, not worth doing the extra effort. Luckily, I don't have to buy those shop bananas anymore. Got plenty here to just keep us supplied all year round, and I grow about 5 different lady finger type bananas, all organic, and they're grown. We grow them amongst just a variety of other fruit trees and native trees and other plants. We let them ripen naturally on the tree, and they taste heaps better, and I don't have to worry about ingesting any of those toxins that they use to grow them overseas. So and the flavour as well, the banana, all the different banana varieties have their own flavours, their own kind of unique taste, and they're not that hard to grow either. So for us, bananas are pretty special because they were important canoe crops that were brought here by Polynesians. The Māori word for them is Maika. In other parts of Polynesia, they're known as Maika. I think that's in Rarotonga. They also use, I've heard words in Eastern Polynesia like Maika, or what else do they use? Maia or Maya. And the cultivars that they bought here actually weren't all that well suited to the cool climate here, but with the colder, hardier varieties that are available now, like the Misiluki, the Hamoa, the Blue Java, and the Goldfinger, those were able to bring a lot of those old banana cultivation traditions, bring them back to life again. And so let's make it a bit of a comeback here in Aotearoa. The most productive and the commonest one that we grow here is the Samoan Misiluki, which is one of the most, it's a very useful plant. You can eat it green, or you can eat it just ripe. There's also other ones like the plantain ones, which is, I think that's called the whi'i, which is an orange coloured plantain, and that was quite an important one because it was usually dried and taken on the long ocean voyages on those canoe. Bananas are kind of sissies. They don't like too hot or too cold, so the secret to growing them, or any other tropical crops for that matter, outside the tropics, is you got to ensure that they have shelter and you also need to consider the aspect that we're growing. These are actually two important Māori horticultural principles that were applied here in Aotearoa, and were based on traditional astronomical and meteorological wisdom. Shelter, well, that was particularly from the southwest winter winds that we get here, really, which are really cold. You also need a bit of shelter from frost. Crops were traditionally grown on a north or northeast facing slope, like the one I'm on here, just to protect them from the colder prevailing southwest winds in winter. And because here in the southern hemisphere the sun has a lower northerly trajectory in winter, it kind of rises more to the northeast and sets towards the northwest. So planting on a north facing slope provides a lot more sun, a lot more warmth and protection for any crops. Shelter can also be provided by planting like under or near trees, or under buildings, like under a canopy is the way we usually grow it. The mara or the gardens in the old days, they had their crops often sheltered by fast-growing pioneer trees like the manuka, and which is also a very useful medicinal tree that attracts a lot of pollinators. I've got banana clumps scattered kind of all over the place here, and the most productive and the fattest racks that I get are the ones that are more sheltered, like under the canopy of larger native trees. Like we've got a puriri and taraire, and they don't get full sun, but they only get like a half day or like morning or afternoon sun. But even though they grow a little slower, they're actually a lot healthier, and they put on better harvests. The leaves don't get, because they're under that canopy, they don't get shredded by the winds. And I think the biggest benefit is that they because all of the leaves and the wood that drops to the floor turns into really premium kind of a mulch, and it's full of that fungi and the indigenous microorganisms that you get in there, and that kind of just gives them a bit of a boost, I think. And yeah, so growing under trees is really good, and it kind of makes sense because originally the bananas, were in the wild, they were growing under rainforests, so it's only natural, I guess. In this cooler climate, bananas out in the open are more exposed to wind, cold and frost damage, which can kind of stunt their growth. But where I am, we don't get any frost, but we do get cooler, like wet winters, and that's when their growth slows down a bit. So having that combination of wet and cold can also cause a few problems, like a bit of yellowing on the leaves, especially if you don't have like a rich, free draining soil, or you don't have that heavy mulch to soak up all the moisture. They also don't really like salt too much, so if you're near the beach, you might want to kind of keep them protected from salt. So the bananas are propagated by separating the younger plants from the mature stems. Commercial growers also use tissue culture or macro propagation methods by cutting the corms into little chunks. But you actually don't really need to do that just for a home garden or just a small scale kind of a garden. It's easier just to cut away one of the baby stems, one of the suckers, and just cut it away from the base of a mature stem, and you just replant it. Just make sure it's a sword sucker, one with kind of thinner leaves. These are better growers, they grow a lot faster. You sometimes get one called a water sucker, which grows further from the main clump, and they just take a lot longer to grow and to fruit even. You can also, when you take off one of the stems, you can take off all the leaves, and it just helps put all its energy into the roots. And as long as there's a bit of a corm attached to the stem, it will form roots. You can also let the corm dry out a little bit before transplanting it somewhere. And then you just shove it in the ground, cover it with a good layer of mulch, and no need to even water it, because the stems are pretty full of water, and you can just pretty much leave it until it puts out more roots, and it'll eventually put out a few more leaves. Bananas like a lot of water. They don't like getting their roots waterlogged though for too long. So if you constantly just lay a mulch around the base, you don't need to water ever. They're actually pretty drought hardy as well. So because they have so much water in the stems, they can go without water for a while. But if you want those better racks, you might want to just keep them watered in the dry months. So I usually leave like one big mature stem which is flowering, and I might leave a medium sized one which will be fruiting the next season, and then I'll leave maybe one or two babies on the side, and those will be in a couple of years that they'll be the next fruiting ones. So you have that succession of banana flowering and harvest, and it also ensures that most of the energy goes into fruiting. So any others, you can just pull them away from the main stem, mulch them up, or just propagate them out somewhere else. A lot of people take the flowers off them when that flower comes out. It puts out a little bell-shaped kind of a flower, and then you get the bananas forming on the banana fingers, forming on that, and then some people cut it off, but I just leave them on because it doesn't really make that much difference to the actual growth of the bananas, or the size of the bananas, or the number of bananas that you get in a rack. And sometimes you might have to. Oh, the other thing is the bees really like those flowers, so just share it around a bit. Sometimes you might have to prop up the stems because the racks can be a bit heavy, but that depends on the variety as well. Some of the Goldfingers have got really fat stems, and they don't need much supporting at all, if at all. When you see a few bananas, like after they start out kind of thin, and they've got kind of ridges on them, and as they mature, they plump out a bit, and once you start to see a few at the top turning yellow, then you can pretty much chop off the whole rack. You're just got to be careful when you chop them off. Just pull down the tree slowly. I usually give it a chop about halfway up, and then just pull the flower down, and the bananas come down pretty slowly without damaging them. You don't want them smashing on the ground or anything. And just be careful with the juice as well. Whenever you're cutting, you get you can get stain. It's a permanent stain from the juice, so just watch out for them. Traditionally, all the parts of the banana stem were used. The bananas were either cooked green, or they're eaten ripe, or they're dried, and even the stems and the leaves and the mulch we use. We use the leaves for hangi, for wrapping our food and putting it in the umu. We also use it to regulate the heat that you get in a hangi. Our hangi is basically a traditional earth oven, underground oven, and it's one of our favourite sort of ways of cooking. We do it more often than barbecues, and I'll probably do a video on that just to show you a bit more info how we do that. We actually use the banana leaves quite a lot, and even we kind of use the stems a bit as well, just to get that right amount of heat, get a bit of steam happening in there. So that's pretty much it, really. If you follow those basic principles, just consider give them plenty of shelter. Think about the aspect that you're on, so that they get as much heat as they can, and if it's cold. And you don't need to waste any more money on supermarket bananas, those bland tasting ones. Just go out there, go hard and grow your own. It's a lot of fun for the kids as well. So, kia ora, mauri ora.